William Shakespeare, playwright, wrote 37 plays in about 20 years. You probably know the titles of some of them: A Midsummer Night's Dream, Othello, Julius Caesar, Romeo and Juliet. You and thousands of students like you in high schools throughout the world study Shakespeare each year. But these are plays. They're meant to be acted. They are works of the theater, and while you will enjoy reading the plays in class, we've created this television series to enhance your enjoyment by considering Shakespeare on the stage. Shakespeare wrote over 400 years ago. The language is sometimes difficult to grasp at first reading. It's only a part of the life of the play, and we want you to see that life in action. In this program, we will introduce you to the various elements of theater that are used in producing Shakespeare's plays in order to help you visualize how the plays you read might be performed. We'll take you to a Shakespeare festival where modern-day productions of the plays are performed each summer. This festival, held on the grounds of a beautiful manor, produces 3 different Shakespearean plays each summer in a setting remarkably like that used in Shakespeare's day. The atmosphere is created even before the play begins. Madrigal singers and a puppet show entertain the audience that is gathering for the performance. The plays are presented outdoors on a simple, bare stage that uses levels and entrances to change locations and to keep the action moving. The actors wear colorful costumes. In Shakespeare's time, these costumes were the clothes of the day, often very rich and colorful because they were donated by people at Elizabeth's court. Today, costumes vary from production to production, depending on the judgment of the director and the costume designer. This production of Othello used costumes of 16th century Venice, Italy, the setting of the play. For Love's Labour's Lost, French clothing of the early 19th century was used to give the actors a sense of dignity with a delicacy of line. For the historical play of King Henry IV, Part 2, costumes from Shakespeare's time were designed to give a flavor of English history. A great sense of fun was captured by having Twelfth Night set in the time of Star Wars rather than Shakespeare's time. Another production made a humorous point of how it can often be difficult for the audience, let alone the reader, to keep track of who's who. These costumes for the Merry Wives of Windsor had each character's name written somewhere on the costumes. At the center of each production is the actor. Here we see Jerome Butler in one of the greatest roles Shakespeare created, Othello the Moor, and Michael Ehrlich in the equally famous role of Iago, the villain whose lies turn Othello into a jealous madman. Through the centuries, actors have had their greatness measured by their success in Shakespeare. Sir Laurence Olivier, the British actor, has been judged the greatest actor of our time, in large part because of his successful Shakespearean performances. There is a real challenge for the modern actor to play a Shakespearean role. There's much for the young actor to learn about speaking the verse so that it's believable, moving in the costume, and developing a fully rounded character. But actors find the roles attractive. Michael Ehrlich is the actor playing Iago. Mike, what is there that's attractive to you about acting Shakespeare?
2 things. The magic of the language, number 1. Actors today, most of their work you'll find maybe in half-hour sitcoms, commercials, movies with big special effects. You don't really get a chance to relish in any language that Shakespeare has to offer. I guess the other thing is you're dealing with a text that's over 400 years old, and it's kind of my way of getting in a time capsule and going back in time and dealing with characters that are larger than life. King Henry V, a Julius Caesar, Hamlet, Iago, Othello. It's that kind of adventure that attracts me most about it.
I think probably the most exciting thing is that he was such a marvelous storyteller, and many of his plays are just flat-out adventurous.
Kathleen Conlon is the actress playing Emilia in this production of Othello. Kathleen, what do you find attractive about acting Shakespeare?
As an actor, I can respond that what I find attractive is the chance to use all the training I've ever had in terms of movement and voice, that it's a technical exercise par excellence. As a woman, I have to answer that the real thrill of performing Shakespeare is the incredibly psychologically complex characters. He has written very few women. There are 2 or 3 main female characters in any of the plays compared to the 20 or 30 men in some of them. But the psychological complexity, the richness, and just the wisdom that is in the plays allows me to do an awful lot of thinking and an awful lot of meditating on just bigger questions, I think.
While you're reading Shakespeare in your classroom, you may not have the opportunity to see a live production of one of his plays, but you will understand that the efforts of many people go into preparing a production. While the actor is the most visible artist in a Shakespearean production, it is the director who actually coordinates the talents of other people involved in the producing of the play. This would include actors, scene designers, costume designers, lighting designers, and numerous technicians. Although in Shakespeare's time, there may have been no overall coordinator comparable to the director, today this person is important in the production of Shakespeare's plays. The director is expected to read the play and decide on a basic interpretation. What is the central idea of the play? What is its conflict? What sort of actor should play each role? Imagine that you were assigning the parts of a Shakespearean play to people you know, perhaps people in your class, perhaps celebrities. How would you cast Mick Jagger, Barbra Streisand, Richard Pryor? It's the director's task to read the play and decide how its meaning can best be communicated to an audience. In the tragedy of Othello, will the production emphasize Othello or Iago, love or hate? Dr. Ralph Lane, director of the festival's production of Othello, describes his responsibilities.
In contemporary theater, the various artists, actors, designers, and directors are all people with a great deal of training, experience usually in their art, and it falls to the director to find a way to bring the various arts of each of those contributing artists together into a unified whole. To do that, the director usually attempts to find a concept, a way in which to discuss the show, an approach to the show that can then be discussed with the other artists, the designers and the actors, as a way in which they can respond and apply their art so that all come together into a unified whole.
Months before the audience sees the production, often before the actors have been assigned their roles, the director begins working with the designers. The costume designer develops drawings or paintings of the characters in costume based on the director's description and the designer's reading of the play. Fabrics are discussed. Actions the characters must perform, such as sword fights, must be considered in designing the costumes. The scene designer for a stage such as the Illinois Shakespeare Festivals must find a few functional set pieces that can be handled quickly between scenes. Shakespeare's plays move from scene to scene and place to place quickly. In this production of Othello, a few decorative pieces were used to suggest where the action was happening, whether indoors or out, whether day or night. As you will learn from reading Shakespeare, it would take many hours to perform his plays if realistic three-dimensional scenery was built to suggest the location of each scene. The Illinois Shakespeare Festival uses a basic set that allows for very quick scene changes. And that's probably the way it was done in Shakespeare's time. Of course, in Shakespeare's theater, there were no electric lights. Most of his plays were performed outdoors in the daytime, occasionally indoors where candles could be used. Today, lighting designers can quickly change from daylight to dark and back. But on this outdoor stage, each play begins in daylight. The director and the designer must solve the problem differently for each play. The director also works closely with persons designing hand properties. Makeup must be considered for each character. One of the most interesting elements of Shakespearean productions is the work of the fight director. This person, working with the director and the actors, performs some of the theater's most exacting and exciting work. Many of Shakespeare's plays require extensively choreographed fights that use dangerous weapons. Of course, the fights must be performed so that the actors and the audience are safe. One of the leading Shakespearean fight directors in America is David Boucher.
I expect maximum realism with maximum safety. I don't think you can juxtapose the two, and I don't think you can sacrifice one for the other. Generally, what I do is I emphasize the safety in a fight, and that's one reason why we do it half speed when we start and walking through it. But when I start putting polishing touches on a fight, it's got to look real, because those people have got to be convinced that those two people don't like each other and they're going to resolve their conflict. And often it's done with sword in hand. And if it's got that climatic drive and the excitement that goes with it, and it moves the audience. A lot of times when I'm looking at one of my own fights, I look at the audience around me. I'm far more interested in how they're reacting to it, because I become very biased in regards to my own work, and I want to see how they're relating to it. And if I've sold them, and if once I see what reaction they've given me, I know how that fight's going to go opening night.
So we have shown you in this introductory program that the task of bringing this Shakespearean play to the stage is a complex one. It involves the director interpreting the play, then working together with actors, designers, and technicians to produce the play for an audience. Of course, in your classroom, there are many other topics and problems to explore. You may want to discuss the costumes that could be worn, or what type of person would be right for a specific role. You may want to talk about the various scenes and what objects, such as chairs or banners, could be used to represent a specific place. Shakespeare's plays can be interpreted in many ways. There are many interesting questions to be discussed when reading or seeing them. This program is intended to prepare you for reading and discussing Shakespeare's plays in your classroom. We hope it will help you be aware of the many elements that come together to create a play for the theater. Thank you.